It began quietly, far from home, in a country known as the Land of a Million Elephants, a place where rivers drifted through mist and memory at their own unhurried pace. Laos did not announce itself with spectacle. It revealed itself as water does, patient and persistent, shaping everything it touched without ever declaring its strength. Landlocked at the heart of Southeast Asia, Laos is bordered by China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and Myanmar. Much of the country is mountainous and forested, its valleys slowly carved by time and water. The Mekong River traces much of its western edge, guiding centuries of trade, settlement, and culture. From the Lanzang kingdom of the 14th to 18th centuries, through French colonial rule, and finally independence in 1953, Laos passed through layers of history and upheaval. By 1975, it emerged as a socialist republic, culturally rich, deeply traditional, and cautiously opening itself to development through regional integration and hydropower. For Adrian Reyes, this marked his first step beyond familiar ground. He arrived in Lao PDR as part of a joint venture tasked with delivering the Thun Hin Bound 2 hydropower project, an undertaking vast in both ambition and consequence. The project united multiple disciplines and landscapes, a dam and intake works anchored in steep mountains, tunnels driven relentlessly through ancient rock, a powerhouse and switch yard positioned with mathematical precision, and a long-tail race canal designed to return water altered by force and purpose, yet not diminished to the river's course. The scheme itself was monumental. Water from the Nam Thun River would be stored high on the Nakai Plateau, collected in a reservoir shaped by monsoon rains and disciplined engineering. From there, it would be diverted through deep tunnels carved into the earth, plunging hundreds of meters before reaching the powerhouse below. Gravity would do the rest. The falling water would drive turbines, transforming seasonal rainfall into electricity, some for Laos, much of it exported beyond its borders. After generation, the water would pass through a regulating pond and be released into the Xe Bang Fai River, crossing from one basin into another, its journey carefully managed to temper environmental and social impacts downstream. Adrian understood the description. He did not yet understand the weight. He left Manila on a long flight via Singapore before descending into Vientiane. A company driver met him at the airport and drove him into the city. His first night, spent in a quiet hotel room, felt less like arrival than suspension, a held breath before something irreversible began. The following morning, he traveled to site with a small group of Italian subcontractors. Marco, the senior structural engineer, spoke in clipped phrases about quantities and schedules. Luca, younger and restless, debated concrete mixes and rebar spacing with animated urgency. Their conversations shifted easily between English and Italian, dense with drawings, deadlines, and experience. Even before Adrian reached the project, he sensed it belonged to many nations and to none of them entirely. After nearly 3 hours on the road, they arrived at the site office. Adrian was introduced to Filipino engineers and tradesmen, men who spoke his language and shared his humor, yet were already shaped by the discipline of working far from home. Assigned to the residential camp, he found himself among familiar voices in an unfamiliar land, where his working life in Laos truly began. He arrived in January 1996 as an AutoCAD designer, young, attentive, and aware that he stood at the threshold of something far greater than drawings and lines on paper. Around him were engineers from Laos, Italy, Thailand, and the Philippines, bound by international standards, shared deadlines, and a landscape that tolerated neither haste nor carelessness. Laos did not yield easily. It demanded patience before it offered acceptance. His days settled into a steady rhythm of drafting tables and glowing screens. Adrian translated engineering intent into form: concrete walls, steel frames, channels, and structures emerging first as faint outlines, then as fully resolved construction drawings. Each sheet carried consequence. Every line would eventually be tested by gravity, water, weather, and time. Consultant drawings guided the work, but the site always had the final word. As construction advanced, drawings were refined, corrected, and sometimes undone by terrain, sequencing, and reality. What seemed certain on paper often unraveled under boots and machinery, demanding humility and revision. By mid-year, restlessness crept in. Repetition dulled the urgency he had felt at the beginning. Wanting the work to move faster and smarter, Adrian began creating his own digital tools, small strings of logic that improved accuracy and speed. Survey data flowed more smoothly, cross-sections assembled themselves, errors diminished, and the drawings gained clarity and confidence. In April 1996, Adrian experienced Pai Mai Lao, the Lao New Year, in Vientiane. Like celebrations back home, it revolved around water. Strangers soaked one another in the streets, laughter replacing formality. For the first time, Laos revealed itself not merely as a project site, but as a living culture. Later that year, Adrian and another Filipino engineer, Ramon, traveled with their Italian supervisors to Thukek, a quiet riverside town along the Mekong. Across the river lay Thailand, close enough to see, yet separated by the slow, deliberate movement of water. Borders here, Adrian realized, were shaped as much by rivers and memory as by lines on maps. He returned to Thukek several times. On one occasion, a Laotian colleague arranged for them to cross the Mekong by small canoe. The crossing was calm, almost ceremonial. They landed quietly on the opposite bank and returned the same way. That afternoon, rain slicked the roads, and a motorbike accident served as a sharp reminder of how quickly confidence could fracture in a land that demanded respect. Life at camp extended beyond work. Supply runs with Mama Six, the canteen manager, offered glimpses of everyday life, markets, shared meals, and quiet resilience. By the end of 1996, collaboration with Lao colleagues had deepened into friendship, and the project felt less foreign with each passing week. In December, Adrian took his first annual leave. The journey home felt longer than before. When he returned in January 1997, Laos no longer felt unfamiliar, it felt unfinished. Drafting had become an apprenticeship in discipline and responsibility. Drawings were no longer abstractions, they were promises to the land, to water, and to the people downstream. In February, Adrian requested a transfer to the field as a surveyor. Under the guidance of a senior Filipino surveyor, he began setting out alignments, staking elevations, and supporting surveys for the dam, tunnel, powerhouse, and access roads. Each day began with travel from the campsite to the dam site, followed by long hours walking up and down between benchmark points and active construction zones. In the field, he learned how locals lived with the land. Food was gathered from forests and fields and cooked simply with sticky rice. Insects were eaten without ceremony, not as novelty, but as sustenance. Survival here was practical, intimate, and respectful of nature. Standing behind survey instruments, Adrian traced invisible lines across valleys and slopes. Measurements returned as profiles, quantities, and as-built drawings, honest records of what the land had allowed. Back in the office, the field followed him. Cuts balanced fills. Drainage followed slopes he had walked. Storm water moved where the ground instructed it to move. In this transition from draftsman to surveyor, from observer to participant, Adrian grasped the true scale of responsibility. A misplaced point could ripple outward into concrete, steel, and water. The work became a dialogue between human intent and terrain. In April 1997, he celebrated Pai Mai Lao again, this time not as a newcomer, but as someone beginning to belong. He joined Lao friends and colleagues, moving from house to house, sharing laughter and traditional food late into the evening. He also attended local weddings between villagers, and between locals and foreigners where celebrations stretched late into the night, accompanied by Lao Lao, the potent rice whiskey, and Beer Lao, the country's ubiquitous lager. At times, there was Lao Hai, shared communally, and novelty spirits infused with herbs or roots, expressions of hospitality as much as tradition. On quieter weekends, Adrian and his colleagues traveled to Thukek, to Vientiane, and sometimes to Lac Sao, a small but vital town along Route 12 near the Vietnam border. Laos served as a logistics hub for hydropower and infrastructure projects, shaped by roads, forests, and constant movement rather than permanence. Vientiane offered a different rhythm. Calm and unhurried, the capital revealed its evenings along the Mekong riverfront night markets, small bars, riverside cafes, and quiet conversation. Life there favored connection over excess, unfolding slowly like the river itself. Adrian returned home again in December 1997 and came back to Laos in January 1998, knowing the chapter was drawing to a close. When he left in May 1998, it was without ceremony. The project itself was not yet complete, it would continue for another year. Laos had already taught him what it needed to teach. It had taught him how to listen.